This is a mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hi, Chief. This is Dave. Can you hear me? Chief, this is Dave at the fire station. Can you hear me?
I can, sir.
No.
Yes, sir, I can.
Sorry, could you please repeat? I was having a little technical difficulty there.
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, great. Are you able to turn your camera on? I need to check that and make sure it's working. Okay, great. And I understand you were going to present something on your computer?
No, I am not.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. All right, great. We're about to get started. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now you got Mary Beth.
1, 2, 3.
All right, good evening. You want to turn that feedback down, Dave? Try. Okay, thank you. I would like to call this July 14th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Second order of business, approve the June 18th and June 23rd Selectmen meeting minutes.
Did I?
Do I have a second?
I want to make sure I was there. Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
I know I skipped one.
Okay, this is, number 3 is the public forum session. This is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to address the Board of Selectmen with any issues that are not on tonight's agenda. They may do so now. Do we have anyone in the audience, Dave?
Yanina would have to tell us.
Okay. Okay, no one in the audience. Nobody virtual or in person. So moving on to number 4, we will consider proposed ordinance revisions for the November ballot. Lori, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. These are items that have been brought to you already or are new to us. And Tracy O'Rourke, our town clerk, will speak to each of them. So the question before the Board of Selectmen tonight is, do you wish us to move forward with each of these in order to prepare them for the November ballot? We would need to make sure each of them has gone through legal review and make any final revisions to bring back to you at your August meeting. And so we are looking for feedback from the board on each one of these. The first one is the Healthy Ecosystem Ordinance. And so I believe Tracy and the Conservation Commission will take you through these.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Tracy.
Is this on? So the first one is the Healthy Ecosystem Ordinance, which is brought forward by the Conservation Commission. Would you like me to have them explain the ordinance to you?
I
Or,
have a couple of questions.
okay. Does somebody from the Conservation Commission?
My first question is, how different is this from what the state mandates?
We've tried to make it as close as possible to what the state requires
Then why are you going ahead with this?
Because-
The state is already mandating.
because the state does not break it down by community at all. So we have no way of determining how much or where substances are being applicated in Kennebunkport.
So you're assuming that the landscapers who do this are not listening to the state? Is
No,
that
no,
why?
they have to listen to the state.
Right.
But And so they are reporting on a statewide basis. And the numbers are available, obviously, on a statewide basis, but they're not available on a community-by-community basis.
Okay,
When
it
you
doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
When you say community, Carol, there are 4 different areas within Kennebunkport that you're separating. Basically, the residential, farm,
Yep, yep.
free enterprise, and the Goose Rocks Beach.
Yes.
Are those the 4? So the idea is to try to understand, I think, Sheila, that if there are differences in the amounts and types in these 4 different areas, what are they? Because it might be significant in terms of the.
And let me go on with that, John. Thank you. To clarify, we heard from the community that probably 29% of the community who responded to us said, ban everything. 29% said, don't do anything. The biggest percentage wanted us to do something, and there was a lot of support for an education campaign.
My
Okay?
first question is, did they know that the state already mandates this?
Yes, we said that in the introduction to the survey.
Okay.
Yep. If they read it, who knows, but we tried. So what we want to find out, we want some data. We're gonna do an education campaign regardless, okay?
Good.
Right?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yes. And so, but we would like to get data to know if an education campaign is enough to reduce the amount of substances.
Shouldn't you do this after? Shouldn't you educate first and then?
We will start educating hopefully in the fall, and we'll do it for probably a couple of years.
Good.
And that'll give us so the first year would basically just be a benchmark. And then we would find out if the numbers went down.
But you feel like you need an ordinance.
I feel like we need data.
So Carol, perhaps you could just, for the people at home too, just talk about what we have now versus what this ordinance is and kind of what it would do.
Okay. So it's important. Thank you for giving me the time to do this. This ordinance is basically applies to any entity with a main commercial applicator license, okay? And it requires the applicators to register with the town annually and report annually on where and how much they apply. Very similar to what they do for the state, okay? This does not apply to any individuals in town, any private citizens. Does not apply to them. They will not have to do anything. Only the commercial applicators. And essentially, we also are asking for some best practices, and that is not to apply anything between the 1st of December and the 31st of March. I'm not sure why anybody would want to do that anyway, but that's,
Do you think they do that now?
it's in the state ordinance as well. I'm sorry, it's not. It's in a couple of other ordinances around, but it's just to be clear that you can't. Not to allow fertilizer to remain on an impervious surface like a road or a parking lot or a driveway, because that increases the amount of likelihood that it will go into the groundwater. And also to prohibit it within 24 hours of a major storm event, a major rain event, which is defined as half an inch or more. And both those two things are really designed to try to keep it away from the groundwater and the rivers and the streams and the ocean. Because I think what a lot of people don't understand is that what you apply on your own property does not stay on your own property. And I think that's just something that's one of the pieces of education that we want to get out there.
Okay.
Mike, did you have anything to add?
Oh, yeah, I do. I got a bunch of questions and so forth. I think you would have been better served if on page 2, if you had at first I didn't know what, because I skipped over some things, what the ordinance was doing. And then I found out very subtly in the page, second page, that in the middle paragraph it said this is not an ordinance to impose. All you're doing is gathering
Data.
And so if somebody was reading this, they would look like it's being imposed on the homeowner.
Okay.
Which led me to my next question was how so what happens to Joe neighbor who puts Roundup on and fertilizes his own lawn and so forth? There's no mention of that in here.
That's,
None. So what it says is people, if you do this ordinance, the average person doing their own yard can do it, and they don't have to report anything.
Correct.
And Roundup, weed be gone. Everything else is just as bad as anything else that can be just as bad as everything else, so, anyway, that was one. The next thing, when I look at ordinances, I look at to see how easily they can be applied and so forth. The thing about the heavy rain in 24 hours, you know, we can't turn people into weather forecasters, and you can't punish somebody if there was nothing in the forecast that said rain, and then they put stuff down and it rains. You gotta, that was one thing. And the other thing that I look is we're putting a lot of additional work on the code enforcement officer, who really has got a lot of other things to do. And so we're gonna have, if we end up approving this or going forward with it, we'll have to find some way of somebody's gonna do the work. So, and I don't think it's gonna be the code enforcement. I also think that it would be very presumptuous to say that the appeals will be reviewed by the Conservation Commission, because that's not likely to happen according to our bylaws of the state and the town. So I don't think that the Conservation Commission is going to be an appeals board. I'm just going through the stuff that I picked up. And then over on page 3, there's a paragraph here that says table of basic pesticides and fertilizers, and it said there are 3 columns. Well, I only find 2. So what column is missing?
what I read here is this first column describes the purpose, and the second column lists some organic and synthetic names.
So where's the 3rd column?
I don't, oh, you're right, there are 3 columns. That would be a
So
typo,
what
that would
got
be a
left-
typo, Mike.
Okay, nothing got left off.
Nothing got left off.
Okay, all right, that's what I want to know. And then the other question I had was, and you can probably answer it very easily, what's the prohibition between December 1st and 31 March? How do we come up with those?
Steve, do you want to answer that?
You mean about the...
You have to, you have,
gotta go
you
to
have
the
to,
microphone,
you got to
please.
come up
The
here.
fertilizers, yeah.
Yep. You might want to say what you do for a living, too.
I'm Steve Hanna from 7 Crescent Avenue. I live here year-round, have for 24 years. And these dates were taken actually from other town ordinances, similar pesticide fertilizer ordinance. There's about 30 other towns in
But
Maine.
what's the logic? I understand that, I've seen it, but what's the logic?
It's just in the winter, the idea is there is a lot of just runoff, and the fertilizer isn't going into the soil. So it would just run off into the ocean and harm the lobsters and other environmental
Do you
things.
think do you think they do that between December and March? I mean, if a company is coming to your home in January and your ground is frozen, I don't think you want to pay for them to do your lawn.
Well, just guessing, this is probably from the more agriculture-oriented towns that have large farms on them. And also the golf courses use a lot of this. So one of the large places might be doing it.
Maybe doing it. We don't know that for a fact.
No, again, this time period was taken from
From others,
the other
okay.
towns' ordinances.
So we don't know the logic to it. The logic is what you explained.
What I would explain as an environmental scientist is what I said.
Okay, just want to know. So, the other thing on this same page is the says the appeals will be reviewed by the Conservation Commission, but there's nothing in here that says what the appeals procedure is. So nothing. So I have no idea.
Well, you know, you also said earlier about the state doesn't allow this to be appealed to Conservation Commission, but there are other town ordinances.
Yeah, I didn't say, I misspoke. It's not the state. We don't generally.
Oh, you
consent.
don't? Oh,
That's
okay.
correct. I misspoke.
All right, sorry.
Yep.
So could I just sort of make a point? Obviously, we are interested in hearing from you folks if there's anything in this ordinance that you think should be changed. You know, we are newbies at this. None of us have ever done an ordinance before, so I am not surprised that perhaps it's not perfect. But we were compelled to do this from the comp plan survey of 2018, in which 85% of the people of town had concerns. We redid the survey this spring to find out if things had changed, and we got very strong interest in doing something. People have concerns, so we're being responsive to the residents.
How many people responded?
650 some odd, 656.
So my only concern is this is not really written like an ordinance would be written.
Okay.
Okay, so I think too that we would need some public input, like a public hearing
Oh,
and
yeah.
so forth before.
I would hope
before
so.
we moved ahead with it.
Yep.
And I understand the purpose.
Yep.
And the need for some things to happen, but we need to get people's input on this. So what we generally, you want to explain what we generally do?
You looking at me or Lori?
Looking at you.
Okay, yeah. Normally, when we create ordinances, we have you know, a public hearing for them, so we can have people come and speak for and against,
Yep.
or sometimes neutral for an ordinance, and we can gather as much information as possible, because if the state's already requiring, for instance, that pesticide applicators, you know, fill out all this paperwork, a lot of them are going to find this to be very redundant, and they're going to be opposed to this. So, you know, in order to have an open and frank discussion about this, because many of them may not be residents of the town and not been either privy or had the opportunity to participate in the survey, you know, I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's just part of making good policy.
Yep.
And I agree with Mike, and, you know, this is not ready for prime time yet, but that doesn't mean it won't get there someday.
For my education, wouldn't this be the first step before the public hearing?
Yes.
To bring this?
This is,
So we're not out of step here.
No, not at
Rather,
all.
You're
No.
saying that this is not written in a format that you think is ready to present for a public hearing.
this
that what
is,
you're saying?
no, this is not written in a format that is ready to go to an ordinance. So what we're determining tonight is if we want to invest the town's money, because we live in a litigious society, so everything's got to go to our attorney in order to, you know, to put these ordinances together in a manner that, you know, will protect our rights in court if we're sued. And the board, you know, the five of us, the four of us tonight, you know, weigh in on this and give direction to Lori and staff as to where we want to go.
And perhaps then what I'm hearing is that if this were to be reworked in a form more like an ordinance, then we would approve that and then it would go to a public meeting?
Yeah,
I'm
we don't,
trying to
we,
understand what the
yeah,
public meeting
there's a process, and believe,
That's what I'm asking what the
yeah,
process
and-
is.
well, that is the process, but I think in order to rewrite this, you know, given the shape that it's in, I would like to have a public hearing so that we can hear from the other side as well.
Before it comes back to us to then go to a public hearing. I'm
No, we're gonna have a public hearing next.
always part of an ordinance, okay.
Before, because there is no ordinance. This is just some thoughts on paper, basically. Yeah, and I mean, this is how it works all the time. Some items are more controversial than others.
Yeah.
Like the rest of these things are pretty much paperwork,
Sure.
you know, correcting things and much simpler.
What is the direction that we're giving them then?
we are going to have a public hearing on this. We will set a date and hold a public hearing, and we'll all reconvene here with members of the committee and anyone, interested parties in the public to discuss this.
But it might be good to do some reformatting this even before that public meeting. It sounded like there was some good input and stuff, so that's what we provide.
I think you've done a good job pulling this together. Carol, I do. I think there's a lot of information in there. And so whether people agree with it or not is another thing, but I think this is a good first step.
Okay.
And I think, and my questions are one of clarification and so forth, and you're gonna get more of those.
Yep.
So, but I see a lot of work went into it. And,
Sure.
And I appreciate that, but we really, like Ed said, we've got to find a way to get it into, whether through the public hearings or meetings
Yep.
or whatever. We, on some of the things, we've done workshops and things like that,
Yep.
public workshops.
Yep.
And so that would be probably the next step, the public
Okay.
hearing and so forth.
I mean, we did, I appreciate that, and we're happy to make any kind of adjustments. I will say that we did reach out to local applicators, and we also had several applicators who have been at Zoom every meeting that we've had since January, since this got on the agenda, and have every single time been very clear about what they do and don't like. And some, we have a difference in philosophy based on what our mission is than they do, but at the same time, we have made changes in this document that you see based on what they wanted.
Yeah.
So.
But it's this board's purview to hear from them.
And I thought a sub-public hearing was a standard, so I'm glad to hear
Yes.
that you are going to have it, because there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who would like to have an opinion.
One way or the other, I hope you do go ahead with the educational part of this.
We will.
Yes.
Yeah.
We absolutely will.
Give some thought about writing the appeals part.
I'm sorry, could you,
If you're planning on an appeals process, you should have that as part of your whatever your proposed ordinance is.
okay,
Okay?
Yep.
So that it's clear who does what and when,
okay,
and what the timing is and that kind of stuff. And same thing that we generally do. Then, as Ed said, after we get an ordinance that we're in agreement with, then we go to the town attorney,
yep,
or it may even be somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So we would go to the town attorney and, before it's finalized.
Yep.
So, yeah.
thank
Certainly,
you.
this board appreciates your work, and, some of the criticisms that have been laid out tonight, I hope you take as constructive and not simply that, we aren't in favor of having some sort of an ordinance in the future or some sort of regulation.
Yep,
But mine wasn't criticism. I was just trying to
understand.
point out what was the things that-
Okay.
I mean, you can see everything I've got. I've marked everything up and went
Yep,
through
no,
it
and I appreciate
and
your
the
time.
and-
That's
and,
excellent.
Want it to go right, whatever we end up doing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And, we've tried to start on a fairly low-level basis because we know it is controversial. So we'll see where we get.
I also was a little concerned about the code officer and what kind of a workload. So if there was some idea of how this would be done, how much effort would
Yep.
be required by the code officer, I think that'd be.
So we have met with Werner and Lori about this, and we discussed that, and there is not the same ordinance, but one of the ordinance that the committee looked at, the subcommittee looked at, was in Falmouth and that is in existence. And I think they had between 18 and 21 applicators report and register. So we're not talking about hundreds, and they're, of course, a bigger town. So we're not talking about hundreds.
You know what might be helpful is to actually, if we could get a copy of what these reports look, what the applicators have to
Yeah,
fill out.
that's the
Because,
kind of thing.
as a commercial fisherman, I certainly appreciate as a lobsterman, you're willing to protect the Gulf of Maine. That's very important.
Yep.
But I find in my business, I have to do things that I find to be quite onerous. And if you have to do them twice, that's just putting a stick in your eye sometimes. So I would personally like to see what they have to go through.
Okay.
So that we have some sense of, is this asking a lot for them
Yep.
to do it twice?
And have you given, I think you need to consider, anyway, recommendation would be, how are you going to handle Joe house owner with Roundup, Weed Be Gone, all that other stuff? I mean, how we,
Yeah, Mike.
how, or are we going to? That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
do you have any idea what the volume difference is between Joe homeowner and commercial appliers? I mean, obviously, we don't
See,
have hard
we-
numbers,
We
but
don't, and that, I mean,
just a sense of
do you
what
have a
gets
sense?
sold at, you know, at Ace Hardware versus
Come on.
what gets put on the commercial.
Hi, this is Steve Hanna again. And you asked about the individual person, and we discussed that. And there's a lot of discussion about privacy issues. You know, in an earlier draft, we had in about having the individual homeowners volunteer the information. But then you need to know what their address is, and, you know, and so we ended up even in having the appliers break down. Some of the towns make them do it by address, but other towns, and the way we did it, is to just have it by zone, so per week, per like Goose Rocks Beach. And I don't know what your feeling is about this, but we felt that we didn't want to have individual information, you know,
I
about
agree.
7 Crescent Avenue.
I agree.
So with the individual reporting, you know, that we're not sure how to do that and retain the, you know, the rights of the person.
Okay, I gotcha.
And again, if you have a chance to get some feeling for the difference, my gut is that the commercial is going to be many, many fold, if not orders of magnitude. So the individual, as important as it is going to be a net in terms of the overall effect if we can handle the commercial. Now, I may be wrong on that.
Right.
But I think you ought to run it to ground.
There is some information. Falmouth has been doing this for a couple of years, and they have annual reports that they've given, and the breakdown on, you know, for different zones, and also they had a breakdown for individuals because apparently, and as you say, the applicators have a much larger number than the sum of the individuals.
Yeah, I would think.
The last suggestion I made was the one about, I would move that paragraph that's on the second cover page up to the front where it says, while there's clearly support from much of the public for some level of action, and while there is an appetite on the KCC for outright ban of these substances, the complexity of that issue prompted the committee to begin with this ordinance. So I think that you put people's current state at ease. This is buried. I didn't even notice it until, not buried, but it's not obvious.
Are you looking at the write-up I did, Mike, or are you
Yeah,
looking at the
yeah,
actual
yeah.
ordinance?
The write-up.
The write-up,
It's,
okay,
it's the second page of your write-up,
okay.
which was very good.
So you're saying I buried the lead, is what you're saying?
Yeah, you buried the lead, yeah.
Okay,
Because that's gonna be the first question people ask.
okay. So, to be clear, should we make changes on this at this point in time? Or should we go to the public hearing first? And then perhaps make changes?
Well,
So I wouldn't recommend that we make big changes. I think some of the things that were pointed out that might have been just corrections,
Yeah.
like the 2 columns, you know, if there's anything like that, I think it makes sense to correct. But I would hate for you to spend a lot of time and energy before they get the public input, and then you're doing it
Agreed.
again.
Okay.
I mean, that's my recommendation, but it's up to the board.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. And,
Are-
and, anything else?
No, thank you very much for your time and all of you for your efforts.
Okay.
Thank you.
we'll
And thank
see
you, guys.
in the
Well
future
done,
at a public
Steve. Well
hearing.
done.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the next 5 ordinances, but before I do that, I thought I might just go over the schedule of how this works and what the timeline is that we're looking at. So tonight was the first presentation of each of the proposed ordinances and/or revisions. And then at the August 11th meeting, which is our next full board meeting, will be public discussion and input. And then at that point, we'll move forward to putting it on the warrant, which will be signed in September.
So that's the public hearing then?
It's not a hearing, it's just
No, we'll
input.
set a date for the public
The
That'll
pub-
be
hearing.
different.
That'll be
something
different,
separate.
that's
The
correct.
public hearing will be held in October, before November.
This won't get on in
This
November.
won't make it, this
I
probably,
see.
probably won't make it into the November ballot.
Yeah, it's a very short timeline
Yep.
between June and November. There's only 5 months. And also, there's usually only 2 meetings of the selectmen in the
yeah,
summer.
right,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's really hard to get anything very complicated on the November ballot if you don't start until June. So, so that's the way it's going to go. The public hearing would be for October 13th, so just to give you an idea. So that's how things are going to go. So the next ordinance is the Kennebunk River Ordinance, and this was brought forward by the River Harbor Master, Jamie Houts, and he's just trying to clarify the definitions of commercial vessel and commercial fishing to make them a little less cumbersome and more direct and clear.
Is Kennebunk going to do the same, do you know? Because we share the river
Yes.
with them and our ordinances need to match up.
Yes.
Yeah. I read the definitions, and as a commercial fisherman, they make perfect sense to me.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, so the next one is the administrative code, and there are 2 proposed revisions. They're more of housekeeping. The first one is to remove the qualification for the town meeting moderator to be a registered voter of the town. The position of moderator is so specific, and there's so many pieces to it that you need someone who knows how to handle motions and things like that. So it only makes sense to allow someone to be the moderator, even if they aren't a registered voter in town. A perfect example would be Durwood Parkinson, who does Arundel, and he also does the school district. So if we are ever in a pinch, we could grab him and have him as our moderator if necessary. And then the second revision is a recommendation that the town attorney brought forward in the spring, and that is to include the RSU directors as elected officials that can be removed from office by the voters. And that was just something that the attorney felt like we were missing and needed to put that in for clarification. And the Administrative Code Committee is in support of these 2 revisions, and April Dufo is here to represent if you have any questions of her.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
But Tracy, it doesn't say anything there about the Board of Selectmen as far
Well,
as.
it says all elected officials, but because the RSU is technically a separate entity, that's why the attorney wanted us to specifically name them.
Oh, I'm good with specifically naming them, but I don't want it to look as though we are singling them out. We were called every name under the sun, and I think erroneously for certain actions this year. And I don't want anybody to say, well, you're singling them out. So I would think that it should read, not, I wrote it down here. Oh, to include, but not limited to, the Board of Selectmen, RSU, et cetera, whatever our major elected positions are.
Okay. So noted. I
Thank
will
you.
add that. You're welcome.
Any
Anything
other
else on
feedback
that
from the
one?
board?
No.
Okay. So the third one is the Shellfish Conservation Ordinance. And the first proposed revision requires any person applying for a shellfish license to do so in person. It doesn't specifically say that right now, and it never used to be a problem until the last 2 years since COVID, and our licenses have gone within the first day. So it's not fair to hold a license for someone who's out of state when in fact someone who's here can't get that license. So that's more just to keep it fair to everyone.
Where does that show in here?
So it's Chapter 127, Shellfish Conservation, and it's letter B. It says, application procedure. Any person who would like to obtain a license must apply in person with the town clerk.
And that's the change?
That's the change,
So
yes.
is that the only, so that's not in red in this case, but
Oh,
that's the
yeah,
only
it should,
change?
yeah,
Yeah.
it may not have
Yeah.
been printed in color, but yes,
Yeah.
that is the first change. And then the second change, again, is just a housekeeping issue. It's letter G on page 2. And the way it read was that children 12 and under could dig without paying a fee. So I think the intention was that they need to be accompanied by an adult holding a shellfish license. So that's just kind of closing a loophole that was there. And the Shellfish Warden has brought these to the Shellfish Conservation Committee members, and they were all in agreement as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So the print of these, though, it looks like we printed it not showing the changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a mark on it saying there was a change in the document, but
Least
it's,
on G.
but it's showing it after. So
Okay.
probably when we print them for the public, we just need to make
It
sure
only
we
showed on G, though.
show the
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I can send another copy to Yanina that has the changes.
But the changes are, I can see the changes have been
That- They're
incorporated.
included, they're just not marked
Okay.
in red. That's
All
it,
right,
yeah.
duly noted. And then the next change is the land use ordinance regarding residential rental accommodations, or otherwise known as roomers. So the Zoning Board of Appeals recommended bringing this amendment forward to change how they are reviewed, approved, and denied. Currently, the applications are reviewed by the Board of Appeals as well as a code enforcement officer, and the proposed amendment would streamline the review process by assigning it to the code enforcement officer specifically and removing the Board of Appeals from the initial review period. All other performance and appeal standards and processes will remain unchanged. And Werner, Director of Codes and Planning, does support this amendment. Any questions on that one? And then the last one is the comprehensive plan update. So as you know, they've been working very hard on our new comp plan.
Yeah.
The 2030 comprehensive plan is now complete and has been submitted to the state for approval. That was done on June 14th. And anticipation of state approval, the final step is to have our plan approved by the voters. And the plan is very lengthy, so we don't have a lot of copies to hand out, but you can view it on our website, which is kennebunkportme.gov. You can review a copy at Town Hall, at Graves Memorial Library, and also the Cape Porpoise Library. And so that's more just a formality that's required by state law that the voters approve it. So at this time, we're looking for recommendations for which, if any of these ordinances and/or revisions you would like to bring forward to the November ballot.
I'd say all but A.
Yeah, A's not ready.
Yeah, B to F is what I'm hearing.
B through F.
Okay.
So we'll prep B through F with legal review, et cetera, to get them ready for the November ballot. So in regards to A, did you have a timeline on when you wanted to do a public hearing, or?
Well, given that it probably isn't gonna make it on the November ballot, given the constraints that we have for our meeting schedule and that we have quite a bit to get prepped for the November ballot, I would suggest that we do it in September or October, whenever you think we can make some time.
Okay,
Maybe at the end of the summer is better, all the applicators will have slowed down, because I'd really like to hear what they have to say. We've heard from at least one of them in our last meeting, and I'd like to hear from all sides of this. Any other comments?
No?
Okay. Moving on, everybody's favorite, number 5, annual board and committee appointments. So it's that time again in the year where we appoint, or in this case, reappoint folks to our committees, and we certainly appreciate it. This is one of the things that makes our town very special. We have a lot of involvement from our residents and input into the things that go on in town. We've certainly seen that earlier tonight with the Conservation Commission, working to make the town, certainly in their eyes, safer and better for lobsters and better for all of us. So I'd like to read these, all of these appointments, in order to keep this brief, will expire or reappointments, and the new term expires in July of 2023.
not all.
No, actually, that's not true. So the first batch, this would be for the Administrative Code Committee, all with July 2023 expirations: April Defoe, Richard Smith, and Michael Weston. I'm just going to read through these, and we'll take a vote at the end for all the reappointments, if that's okay with everyone. Board of Assessment Review, April Defoe and Karen Schlegel, both July 2025. Cape Porpoise Pier Advisory Committee, both July 2023, George Dow and Peter Eaton. Cemetery Committee, all July 2023, Linda Bryant, Ruth Fernandez, Greg Pargalis, Ann Saunders, and Rita Schlegel. Government Wharf Committee, again, July 2023, Ron Francor, Andrew Welch, and Chris Welch. Growth Planning, July 25, Jim McMahon. Kennebunk River Committee, July 2025, Robert Danzello and Susan Inoue, Kennebunk River Committee. Parsons Way Committee, July 2025, Louise Fang. Public Safety Committee, July 2023, all of these. Joseph Carroll, Jay Everett, Chief Craig Sanford, and Chris Simeone, Public Safety Committee. Wastewater Advisory Committee, July 2023, Bob Convery, Joseph Mead, and Margaret Myatt. Shade Tree Committee, July 2023, Tricia Concannon, Steve Hanna, Nina Perlmutter, Stephen Powell, and finally, Zoning Board of Appeals, July 25, April Defoe. Do I have a motion?
Raymond, you have something on the next?
Yeah,
sheet?
but those are new appointments.
These are all reappointments
Yeah,
on
those
this
are
list.
okay.
reappointments. I'm going to take them separately, if that's okay.
Gotcha.
Move accepted as read.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you to everyone on this list. You make a great contribution to this community. Okay, so these will be new appointments.
New appointment.
And Board of Assessment Review with an expiration of July 2024. Mary Beth Gilbert. Cape Porpoise Pier Committee with an expiration of July 2023. Kyle Emmons. Government Wharf Committee, July 2023. Christopher Audley. And 2 for Zoning Board of Appeals, both July 2023. Mary Beth Gilbert and Michelle Powell. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you again to everyone.
Maybe Michelle.
Okay, now for the fun part, our committees. So these were last year's committees. Cape Porpoise Pier Committee, myself. Goose Rocks Beach Advisory Committee, myself. Government Wharf, Alan Daggett. Growth Planning Committee, Alan Daggett. Graves Library, Mike Weston. Investment Committee, Alan Daggett and Pat Briggs. I need somebody for that one. Kennebunkport Housing Trust, Pat Briggs. Chems, Pat Briggs. Planning Board, Sheila Matthews. Public Safety Committee, Pat Briggs. SMRPC, Mike Weston. Shade Tree, Sheila Matthews. And Zoning Board of Appeals, Sheila Matthews. So, in speaking with everyone earlier, it seems like for those of us who are returning, with the exception of myself at the Goose Rocks Beach Advisory Committee, everybody wanted to maintain the committee assignments that they had. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that leaves Goose Rocks Beach Advisory Committee. Do I have any volunteers?
I would love to do that.
Okay. Mike West, John Dykstra.
And I would.
Yes, and you were excellent, and I'm glad to see that you're returning to the committee. I thoroughly enjoyed my time on there, and I'm not just saying that, I really did. And I enjoyed working with you, and I'm glad to see you here with us now on the Board of Selectmen. So that leaves Investment Committee. Pat Briggs was on that.
Could I just mention that we really have a one to add here, don't we? Shouldn't the Climate Action Force be kind of considered an additional task for this board? Mike and I are both sitting on that, and it's a significant committee.
Well, that's a good question. Administratively, Lori?
So the reason why it's not on the list is because it's an ad hoc committee that has a term. It doesn't mean that you're not putting in that work and shouldn't be recognized. But you guys made the appointments already, so that's why I didn't put it on this list.
Okay, but it is a full year term. so
It is
that
a 16-month term, yep.
Yeah, better than a year term.
Yes.
So-
But we are represented by the two of you.
That's right.
So-
I guess I'm just trying to be clear.
You want
that-
credit
You
that
have
we're
your
doing.
I want-
sucker punishment,
I want
yes.
to make it clear that I have some things to do, yeah.
So, investment committee, do we have any volunteers for that? I'm happy to do it if nobody else.
I'm done.
You done?
I've got 3.
Okay. Well,
Well, let's hold it. I mean,
let's come back to that one.
yeah, let's come back.
Okay, so Kennebunkport Housing Trust, that was one of Pat's committees. I believe I've spoken to you, John. You interested in it?
I would-
Okay.
I would like to take that.
Planning Board. Okay, Public Safety Committee, that's one I would like to be on. That was one of Pat's committees.
Good, thanks.
I enjoy working with the chief.
So,
Okay,
Ed?
so that leaves Chems, and I believe Chems meets on Mondays, and I am unavailable on Mondays.
as am I.
So we have two options. We make Alan do it because he's not here, or somebody steps up.
Well, Alan's got 1, 2, 3 as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got enough.
Is this where the new kid gets looked at?
Perhaps.
Is this?
Well, you are retired, John.
Yeah, this is where the new kid gets looked at.
I mean, I would just say that, Goose Rock's Beach Committee is a
Minimal.
fairly heavy load, I
Yeah.
would say.
No.
And so is CAMS. I would say the investment committee, we meet like twice a year. And you get to hear all the newest on the stock market
Gee, that sounds like a good one.
from Dan Lay at HM Payson. So to me, that's a fun committee. And it's probably a light load. But I would say CAMS, Pat has done an excellent job representing the board in the past with CAMS. And that is another load that, they meet similar to the library where it's every month. And, the financial well-being of our emergency medical services is at stake. So maybe you guys want to give that some thought.
Okay.
And I'm happy to tell Kims that you'll, if anybody wants to try out a meeting, but we can hold on that one for now if you want. Did anybody want investment or,
Well, John and I both said that we would do it, but
so am I putting your name down?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we can have 3 people. It doesn't.
Well, no, I'd want, that's, I want to have 3 there and leave somebody hanging, that's the only thing. But I do feel if I did chems as well, that would be more than
That would be a
would
lot
wanna
of work.
take on.
I did
Sorry,
chems my
just-
first year, and it's a lot.
It deserves a lot of attention.
Yep.
That's,
So as I have it right now, I will be doing Cape Porpoise Pier. John will be on Goose Rock's Beach Advisory. Government Wharf will be Alan. Growth Planning will be Alan. The Graves Library will be Mike. Investment Committee will be Alan and myself. Housing Trust will be John. Chems, we're leaving blank for right now. Sheila will be doing Planning Board. Public Safety will be myself. SMR, I've written on this so much I can't even see the initials anymore. PC will be
Southern-
Mike. And Shade Tree and Zoning, ZBA, will both be Sheila.
Yep.
Do I have a motion for that?
The motion is read.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, moving on. Consider reappointment upon retirement of MEPRS of Michael K. Olaf.
Right, and Chief Sanford is joining us virtually.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Chief.
Hey, Chief.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Chief, do you want to cover this, or do you want me to?
Okay, yeah, no, I can. Sergeant Mike Keola has completed his 20-year requirement for his retirement for the main PERS retirement system. He has requested, under the personnel policy, to be able to retire and then come back for a rehire. Under those stipulations, he will lose his rank and his seniority. And it is my recommendation to the board that we go ahead and approve this. In today's market, we're having difficulty staffing, and to lose an experienced employee, it would make it tough. We already have one brand new employee that's in training as we speak, and it would be beneficial for us to be allow him to do this.
What are the wishes of the board, or any comments?
I have no problem with this at all.
No.
Applaud him coming back. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So do I have a motion to accept,
Motion to reemploy Michael Keola.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Great.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, adopt the updated York County Hazard Mitigation Plan. This was a monster. And
This is another Chief Sanford one.
Back again. So this is an updated version of the York County Emergency Management Hazard Mitigation Plan that's required through the Federal Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. So they are required to have this plan or overview in place. It covers all of the jurisdictions in York County. We are part of that, and part of that process is for you folks to accept the updates and sign off on this agreement. And basically what this does is it keeps us in play for federal funds should and when we have another disaster, such as a flood or a bad storm, something like that. This will actually allow us to apply for federal funds should something like that happen. And I am recommending that you accept the updates. There weren't any updates for Kennebunkport that were anything of any significance. It just needed to have a newer stamp on the entire plan for York County.
great, thank you, Chief. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt the updated York County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes.
What a great document.
Thank
by
you,
the way.
folks.
Yeah,
Really.
Thank you,
really.
Chief.
pretty thorough.
Information
Okay.
packed, too.
Number 8, with a lot of good news attached to this, consider awarding Pier Road Causeway Construction Engineering contract.
So as the board will remember, we did put money in this year's fiscal year budget to undertake the engineering of the Pier Road Causeway area. We requested $200,000 for the engineering and design, and part of that is a public engagement program so that we can establish what makes sense based on the newest information on sea level rise, as well as, making sure that we're not negatively impacting abutters. At the time, we put the proposal out for engineering before the fiscal year began because we also applied for a brand-new grant program with the state of Maine to take care of sea level rise projects. At the time, we had very little turnaround time in order to apply, and our project didn't necessarily fit neatly into the grant program because it was a brand-new program. And so it was what I considered a long shot. But knowing that we have several substantial projects on our list that are going to cost the taxpayers a fair amount of money, we did apply for the funds. And I'm happy to announce that today we received word from Maine DOT that the town of Kennebunkport successfully received grant funds for the construction of the Pier Road project to the tune of $2.585 million. So this engineering is,
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
awesome effort.
Yeah, great work by you and
Yeah.
staff.
and so, I'm very happy, Eric and Mike Claus, remember my new consultant, Mike
yeah.
Claus? And Eric LaBelle and Eli Rubin worked on this in combination and really put together a great project that I'm very happy to say was accepted. So the first step in that process is we do need to award the engineering contract so that we can get started on that design. And so I think Eric is going to give you the rundown on that.
Good evening. So we received.
Make sure
excuse-
that mic is up tall enough for you.
Sorry. Hear me okay now? Yeah, all right, very good. So we received 4 RFPs we sent out a request for proposals. We received 4 proposals in the process. And there's quite a range in the pricing. We looked at the individual firms that are submitted, the packages that are put together, the teams that were put together. Since the project, it does have some complexities to it with, speaking of rising sea levels, the Causeway there actually has 2 elements on each side of the Causeway, 2 different, really, if you'd like, types of weather that the Causeway will have. So we wanted to make sure that we had the right firm in place and the right level of competency that would go into the design. Since one, it's very expensive, but secondarily, obviously, we didn't want to have any future issues with this. We narrowed this down to 2 firms, and that was Wood Curran as well as Gold Palmer, thinking that they were the best, most qualified, most responsive firms to what we were looking for, and sat down with them to ask some further questions as to their approach, their philosophies, their team, so on and so forth, just to really just gather more information. After those interviews and the pricing between the 2 of them are about $2,000, it was somewhat, based on the cost of the price and the design, it wasn't a very big number. It wasn't a very big nexus between those 2 firms. In the end, we felt Wood Curran was going to be the best suited firm to go forward, and that's the recommendation at this point that we have.
Thank you, Eric.
What was the discrepancy in the amounts? It seemed very odd.
Yeah. I think some of the approaches were some people may just be coming in here, they were going to do a road design and get you a design. Boom. There's going to be some public process here. There's other considerations, obviously, meeting with the public, making sure the public is, and as well as the commercial industries that work there, they're going to be, that we'll be working with them. And there's a fair amount of engineering time spent in that particular process. There's also the analysis of the actual one side of the Causeway has a certain amount of fetch or wind, if you will, that will send wave action one direction. The other side is more tidal. And having a good understanding of that analysis, and as they go through the design process, they may very well come back and say, 6 feet's not the number because really, Cape Porpoise will be flooded. Maybe what we should be doing is 4 feet. And coming back with those recommendations based, we need a little more of that analysis as part of this design review as well. So not everyone, I don't think, was.
So to say it more
Carrying.
simply, some people were engineering to just increase the height of the road to the
Right.
6-foot level we had put in the proposal, whereas really what we want is an analysis of what makes the most sense based on all those circumstances.
Yeah.
And that public engagement piece we think is important.
Will they work with us, Eric, up for the permitting? Because it's my understanding we'll need some permits because the Causeway will ultimately end up being a little bit wider than it currently is.
Yes, that would have been immediate.
Yeah.
We will toss you out if that's not. That is part of the core permits, marine resources, so on and so forth, and all the inland
Army
fisheries.
Corps and. Yeah.
Yep, and everybody that needs to go along with that, that is part of the permitting process. Yeah.
Great. Is there any other questions from the board?
I'm fascinated to see how we're going to do this.
I bet you are.
I just, we're going to float a bridge. I won't even ask you now. I can't wait to hear what they say.
You'd be down checking out the core
How you
samples, I
gonna
know.
build this thing? It's going to be great.
So,
Is there any thought to opening that up so that you can go between the harbor and the outer islands. In other words, unfill it,
Unfilled.
unfill the causeway. This gonna be a span?
Oh, going to bridge it,
So the kayaks and stuff can go under it, and have to go around. I just wanna know if any thought is,
that was not part of our proposal request. I will say that. The purpose was really to raise it.
I think we would end up with problems. I wouldn't support doing that, because what's going to happen is you're going to start filling in what the Army Corps of Engineers dredged out 2 years ago. You know, all that silt and sediment that comes down that run, which is the area.
I'm asking a question, I just wanna know if there's,
It wasn't,
an expert opinion of something that.
it wasn't part of the ask.
Okay.
And we certainly have met with a lot of engineers prior to this time. It wasn't raised by them either as being a more
You need it.
viable or economical
I don't think it'd
solution.
be a very good idea.
We can certainly discuss the question with,
Yeah.
with
Yeah, I think it
the,
would
with
be
the
a great
engineers.
idea, but. I disagree.
Until
I
you
disagree with
can't
that.
go up the ditch anymore at low tide, Mike.
I imagine there'll be some action, some wave action coming around. As I mentioned before, there's two different conditions on each side of the causeway.
So what staff is requesting is that the board authorize the award to Woodard and Curran for the not-to-exceed design cost of $189,700. Since our budget right now is only $200, and we're not prepared to go forward with construction administration, we wouldn't be taking on that contract at this time.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Right.
Great.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes. Thank you, Eric. Okay, I think we're going to see Chris next to award the winter salt bids.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. So we just recently received the winter salt bids for the 2022-2023 winter by the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. They had two responsive bidders. One was Eastern Salt at $78 a ton, and the other was Morton Salt at $99.88 a ton. This is up $20 a ton from what we paid this past year. So I am recommending that we accept the bid from Eastern Salt at $78 per ton delivered.
And it's my understanding, Chris, that we already pre-bought a lot of salt before the price went up.
That's correct.
That was very good thinking
We
on it.
received this bid the first week of June. When I looked at this as compared to what we had paid this past year, and seeing that it was going to go up $20 a ton, we had some money left over, so we pre-purchased about 2/3 of what we're going to need for the coming winter.
Very
Excellent.
good.
Good job.
Any supply issues on the horizon?
I would expect that we're going to start seeing it just because there is an issue with getting CDL drivers right now. We actually have to bring in some fill for the upcoming roads that we're taking care of. And we were informed today by Hissong that they didn't have enough drivers to actually be able to deliver what we needed. So we're going to have to start coordinating our deliveries. So I expect this will be a problem.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, Chris. Don't go anywhere. Consider and authorize bids for a new single axle dump truck.
Yeah, so in June, we went out to bid for a new 5-ton replacement truck. We did receive 3 bids back, well, I should say 4. One of the companies did bid 2 different trucks. There was quite a bit of difference in the pricing. Daigle and Houghton proposed an international for $218,552. HP Fairfield also bid a international for $247,305. O'Connor Truck bid a Western Star 47X for $246,416, and a Mack for $251,416. Right now, for a host of different reasons, we are recommending the Western Star 47X. You know, we looked at this truck. This is what we purchased last year. So far, we're having very good luck with it. We have had some problems with the internationals in the past. One of the issues has been corrosion on the frame. So the truck that we let go last year, and the truck that we are replacing this year have what's called, it's a multi-stage frame, so there's basically 3 pieces of C-channel that are sandwiched together. And the issue with that design is that obviously these trucks live in a harsh environment, so we get the salt and the magnesium chloride in between the frame rails, and we have no way of cleaning it out because it's packed in between the different segments of frame. So eventually that rusts, and it actually causes the frame to separate, which is why the truck last year wouldn't pass inspection. The design of the Western Star is just a single C-channel frame. So when we put the body up on the truck, we're able to access everything under that frame and actually clean it out. The Western Star also had a higher gross vehicle weight rating, which means it's a higher payload. We can actually haul more with that truck. It also has more horsepower and torque. So I think, when we're plowing, the torque is what does the work. That engine should work a lot less doing the work, and hopefully conserve on fuel. The visibility in the Western Star is also quite a bit better than the International. Just from having the truck that we purchased last year, crew has been excited about transitioning to these because the visibility is so much better in the truck. So for those reasons, that is why we're proposing, recommending the Western Star model.
Chris, does the Western Star also have an aluminum oil pan and cab?
Yes, it does. So the Western Star does have a Detroit diesel in it. It has an aluminum pan. The Internationals that we have now with the Cummins-powered engines have had steel oil pans. We've had to replace 3 of those this past winter at the cost of about $1,100 per pan. And, as we also, as Ed said, the frame, the cab is aluminum. So the new Ford Super Duty pickups and the Ford half-ton pickups have all gone to aluminum. We actually have several of those trucks in the fleet, and we're not seeing any corrosion issues with those. So I think the long-term durability of the truck is going to be longer than what we've seen with the Internationals.
I've had my F-150 since 2016, and there's no rust on it. And I've never had a truck last that long with what I do to it. You guys don't do much better.
Right.
Do you want to just talk about delivery times and the other trucks we bid and what
Yes,
happened?
yeah. So with the other trucks, the International that was proposed by Daigle and Houghton, this truck has not been built yet. They said the chassis would take approximately a year. So the cab and chassis would be a year for delivery. And then we're looking at about another 6 or 7 months for the body and plow setup and for that truck to actually be built and upfitted. So I wouldn't expect that we would see that truck much before February of 2023. 2024. And also the International that was proposed by HP Fairfield is a truck that is already built. However, that truck is lacking some of the things they wanted that we wanted as a crew. One being that truck was going to come through with a poly plow, not the heavy steel plow. We've had issues with the poly plow. They're just not heavy enough. If we get a heavy type of snow or sleet like we had in that first couple of storms this past year, the plow simply rides right up over the top of it. It doesn't dig in and scrape. So that's a concern with the bids on the other couple trucks.
Sounds like a slam dunk to me.
Yeah. So do you have a
I'll make,
question, Sheila?
no, I was.
Do
gonna
I have
make
a motion?
I'll make a motion that we okay the purchase of the Western Star 47X for $246,416 to O'Connor Truck.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Chris, and thank you,
Thank you.
very much for your homework. I got to spend some time with the town mechanic the other day, and he was showing me the differences in the
Very
trucks, and I think this was a very
Very
wise
thorough. Yeah.
decision on your part.
Yeah, there's some extraordinary differences
absolutely.
between
I
the
like
two of
the
them.
lower RPM on the Detroit as opposed to the higher RPMs on the Cummins. That ought to add to some longevity of the motor.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, okay, moving on. Number 11, street opening permit by KK and WWD Water District for Wildwood Ave to Broadway Ave.
Yeah, so this was to replace a failed seasonal water line that came off of Broadway that had failed for a number of reasons, corrosion. It had also burst this past winter because the depth of it. So it was something that needed to be replaced. So this time they elected to come in off Wildwood Avenue. It was an easier way to feed that, and they were able to get the depth that they needed. The work was completed. It was completed yesterday. By ordinance, they had to file, a street opening permit within 24 hours of taking care of the issue, so.
Do I have a motion?
Go ahead, Mike. Motion to allow this street opening for Kennebunkport, Wells Water District for Wildwood Avenue to Broadway Avenue.
Have a second? All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 12, authorization of the Chowder House lease. Lori, do you want to speak to that, or?
Sure. In your packet is the Chowder House lease for a 5-year term. The tenants at the Chowder House are interested in pursuing an extension of their current lease. They have proposed an allotment of $40,000 per year. The current tenants have been good tenants in the past and have not only paid their lease on time, but usually in advance. We did look as staff at what some other commercial rents are for our area. And I think that what we found is that this lease amount probably exceeds what we're seeing other commercial leases for our area bring in. And so the question before the board is if they will approve this extension.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion passes.
And that was to authorize the town manager to execute the lease, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Must be a bad microphone.
I just was checking.
Okay, and the ballot for election to MMA Legislative Policy Committee. Isn't that fighting style?
So the Maine Municipal Association has a legislative policy committee that reviews all proposed state legislation and makes recommendation for lobbying efforts. So I have served on the Legislative Policy Committee in the past. I am put my name in to be nominated again for the next 2-year term. I am requesting the board if they would vote for my name. There are currently 3 names on the ballot and 2 will get elected.
I gratefully propose that we put forward Lori's name.
You are a sucker for punishment, Lori.
And
Do I have a second?
second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Good luck, Lori.
Yeah,
Look,
I think
thank
it's
you.
great, Lori, that you're doing
Yes.
this. I really do.
Thank you, thank you.
A lot of work.
Okay, and now for the fun part. Number 14, we move to accept a $125 donation from Lexi Stockwell towards the emergency fuel account.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
We should
Thank
mention
you.
it's from her personal Girl Scout cookie sale.
Oh,
Oh,
very nice.
interesting.
I did not know that,
Yeah.
or I forgot that. That was wonderful.
Very nice.
That's wonderful.
And number 15, to
Thank you,
accept a
Lexi.
$150 donation from Bree and Scott Clark in memory of Carol Chamberlain, dedicated to the nurses' general account.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Motion passes with much appreciation. Okay, other business. John,
None.
Mike,
I have none.
Sheila,
None.
Lori,
I have none.
and I have none. So, do I have someone want to move the warrants?
Approve the July 14th Treasury warrants. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? And I'm the
Move to
chairman, so
adjourn.
you're up.
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you for coming out this evening.
I had